Vote for my Samus Aran helmet on LEGO Ideas to help it become a real LEGO set. Greetings, and welcome to a meticulous building session, the series where we look at the design process behind my LEGO MOCs. Today's model is Glamrock Freddy from Five Nights at Freddy's Security Breach. I've only made one other non-Brickhead's FNAF MOC, that being Springtrap from FNAF 3, and that was just over 4 years ago. Here's hoping I've improved my skills since then. So, 2 points before we start. 1. In order to keep my sanity, Freddy's chest will not open, as there's really no point since I'm not making Gregory. And 2. Stability is a priority. Generally, I value form over function, but I'm going to take a little extra care to ensure you can pose Freddy without getting completely frustrated in the process. I'm thinking something like those Star Wars figures from a couple years back. Alright, let's get started. I first got to work on the arms because I already had a good idea on how I was going to do the legs and feet. Unfortunately, I quickly ruled out using traditional ball and socket joints as they aren't very compact, which I was going to need in order to add details. Elbow joints are limited in scope of how you can pull them off, so I had to settle on how I was going to build them first before proceeding to the shoulders. I decided on a technique I saw some years back in which you use 2x2 round plates and some small Technic connectors to create something of a double elbow joint. I had previously employed this method once before, but used wrenches instead of the Technic connectors as I wanted a bicep swivel. However, those have a slightly looser grip than their regular bar pieces, so the arms kept falling off. Fortunately since then, LEGO has come up with a 1x1 round plate with a bar on the end. This was just what I needed to create a proper elbow joint. I ended up continuing down the lower arm, making sure to add a little detail to give the illusion of the spiked band on Freddy's wrist, before coming to the hand. Since Freddy has quite big fists, this part was easy, even being able to two-tone the fingers orange and tan. Then I had to come back to the shoulders. Initially, I wanted the shoulder pad to be able to move independently from the arm, and I got a prototype working to a degree, but there was a twofold problem. First, I was using a one long bar with clip as a shoulder joint, but this proved way too weak and couldn't hold the arm up. And second, I couldn't make the shoulder pad fold down onto the arm, which kinda defeated the entire purpose, so in the end, I hard rounded it to the arm. But working that out revealed a new problem. If the shoulder pad was flush with the shoulder, it collided with the torso when the arm extended outwards. So I came up with a bit of a convoluted design that goes something like this. First you take a 2x2 bracket, then a plate, then some 1x1 brackets, then some 1x2 round plates, then a couple 1x1 round plates with the open stud, and finally you squash a T-piece in between all that and connect it to the torso. Oh, and by now you can actually assemble the shoulder pad. While utilizing all those rounded pieces keeps the arm movement from being impeded, it crosses having to make it 2 plates thicker than I would have preferred. Regardless, it's a satisfactory arm, so time to move on to the feet. As I mentioned at the start, I pretty much knew I was going to use this 1x2 bow bricks for the toes, and after messing with a bit of contouring for the rear of the foot, it all pretty much fell into place. There was, just one problem. The ankle was super frail, a big no-no since it breaks rule number 2. To add insult to injury, I then also thought that the foot was too big. This is a part of the story where I go on a merry goose chase designing smaller, more stable feet. And while I'd rather skip the whole thing, this is the reason why you're watching, so here we go. My first thought was to attach a ball joint to an axle with mini ball joint, with the small size allowing me to reduce the footprint. Spoiler alert, it didn't work. Turning my attention to the 2x2 Technic brick with ball joint, I found I could firmly mount it with ease. However, because it was farther back than my initial design, it made the foot look even bigger. Okay, so just shrink the foot. Can't be that hard, right? But I'm dancing within a 2x4 space 5 plates tall. Not a lot of room when you have studs on side building going on, while also trying to add some curvature on top. Combine that with the middle toe needing to be on a jumper, and nothing I tried improved the aesthetic or stability. So what do you do when all your schemes fail? Just go back to the first version. Don't tell me you haven't done something similar yourself. But I did find a way to improve it. By using a Technic plate with holes, I could then insert a free long axle with stopper and one of those ball joints with the hole going all the way through to create a fairly solid ankle. It would be stronger if the Technic plate was one higher, but then you would have more color bleed and... yeah, this is the kind of stuff that keeps me up at night. So let's just forget about it. Now that we know what connector the foot is using, we can toss some legs on top and... oh, wait, take the armor off for a moment. Yeah, no, we can't use that piece. See, this is one of those prime examples of why you build a physical prototype of your digital models. Because even though this works in the computer, it doesn't really work in real life. Oh shame, the color coordination was going so well, and now the bones of the upper legs can't be orange. That's okay, we'll just use dark gray. I mean, the endoskeletons are gray anyways, and it's less shocking than black, so yeah, I'm cool with it. Which means we get to use two of my favorite Technic pieces. The ball socket with through hole, like we used on the foot, and the joint socket with vertical axle hole, combined with a free-along axle, and you get a bone that's the same size as our orange one, but with a ball joint for attaching Hero Factory armor. So there we go, now we got arms and legs. Time to build a torso to connect them all together. I decided to not use the 2x2 Technic brick with two ball joints for the hips, as I wanted to add a bit of color since I wasn't able to use those orange upper leg bones. Sure, the legs might pop off if you're too aggressive with them, but they should be just fine. I don't really have an explanation as to why I built the torso the way I did, though I do know I was taking some pointers from my Gilded Guy model. Which brings me to a bit of a public service announcement. Since the core of my initial prototype was going to be comprised of these bricks, I was going to spin them around so I could tile off the front and back of the torso. You know, so it would look better. However, that doesn't work. Here's why. Even though they look like 2x2 bricks, they're not actually square enough to be placed bottom to bottom, meaning you can't use them to create stud inversion. So something like this technically wouldn't really work either. This is one of those things I really don't understand why it doesn't work, other than the fact that it just doesn't. Moving on. Since I was attaching the arm via a 1x1 headlight brick, and since the early design didn't have anything securing it on the top, I wanted to add a little extra strength and place a 1x1 brick with stud on the side behind it. This was just something I kept in the final build. Okay, I actually didn't realize I could have perhaps changed it, or the fact I didn't need to use those 2x2 round plates anymore, as even square plates weren't going to get in the way of the arm movement. Moving on. All that was left was to add a bow tie and that blue lightning bolt to his chest. Which looks okay, there's really just no good way to do it at this scale. Oh, and I want to quickly mention that I recessed the socket for the neck by half a stud using some jumper plates. And finally we get to the head. Fortunately, Freddy doesn't have a traditional head, so that will make this easier, but by no means does that make this easy. See, the main portion of his head is 3 studs tall, but each layer is a different width. The lower jaw is 9.5 plates, the upper jaw is 11 plates, and the eye layer is 10 plates. It'll be better if I show you what I'm talking about. Here is the bottom jaw. We have a super Erling brick in the back, and just a brick with studs on both sides. These are what connect the sides of the jaw with the hinge mechanism, which is attached to the super Erling. All well and good, but for the next layer we need to have the proper ratio so we can have a plate centered to make the nose. So we'll use one of these special plates, sometimes called a lamp holder, which will allow us to build studs facing outwards on both sides while still having a center row for the nose. Now this is all pretty straightforward in retrospect, but trying to figure it out initially was tricky, especially for the next part. To recap, we've got an upside down super Erling, a plate, then a lamp holder, and then we top all that off with a 1x1 bracket. For anyone interested in a little more info on why I'm building it like this, you can take a look at my video on sideways building. I'll put a card in the top right linking to the video. Wait, I know how to do that, right? Anywho, we now need to convert the single stud bracket into 2 studs, and we do this by using one of the newer type jumper plates that has a stud holder in the center, acting like an inverted jumper if you will. And since the stud on top is partially hollow, we can still put a 1x2 plate, or in this case a bracket, on it like so. Adding another bracket going the opposite direction gives us a nice 2x2 space for the hat later. After that, it's more or less conventional building. Now we can place his head on the torso and ta-da! It's Glamrock Freddy! But he wouldn't be complete without his mic stand, so one simple build later, plus a slight modification to the hand so it can easily clip to it, Freddy is ready to rock. And since I could never leave well enough alone, I also made a waving hand. And that's that. Glamrock Freddy is such a friendly character, which is a welcome change from him trying to kill you in every other installment. But for me, it's not just that. It also has to do with the whole experience of the Pizzaplex and Security Breach. From the environment, to the music, to the glamorous nature of the animatronics, it all just captures that 80s feeling. Or at least, the idea of the 80s feeling. Because just like heroic knights and western gunfights, history has a tendency to be romanticized. But there's nothing more 80s than synthwave, which FNAF actually got me to start listening to for a strange twist of events. But it's kinda like a guilty pleasure, the idea of dwelling on a time that somewhat didn't exist. But I guess that's what makes it fun. Enough of my rambling. If you'd like to see this build in more detail, you can check out the building instructions in the description. But that's it for this video. So until next time, goodbye.